Hello, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Parthopotim Bora from Department of Sociology, Dibrugarh University, Assam. This module entitled Class, Culture and Power from the paper Contemporary Social Theory. In this module, we will be basically discussing the basic concept of class, culture and power. The various contribution to this concept, or on the other hand, how these concepts class, culture and power are developed by various sociologists and how they are continuing over the years, and the relation that exists between the class, culture and power, especially in the contemporary time. So we will be discussing from that classical theories, Marx, Weber, their idea of the class and the idea of the power, and then we will go to the contemporary theories, especially with the emphasis on the work of Bourdieu and Zizek, to understand how these three important components work in the contemporary society. On the other hand, what is the relation between them in the contemporary society? How the power shape the nature relation between the class and culture. So this will be the basic objective of this module. If we see the concept of class, it is basically the Marxian understanding of class that always get prominence. Or on the other hand, the Marxist or Marx understanding of class is that one of the large literature on the class. So Marx's understanding of class was basically, he was trying to see the difference between the bourgeois class and the proletariat class. So although there is always an emphasis on these two classes, but there was also a mention of some other class like petit bourgeois or lumpen proletariat. But what Marx said that over the years, during the height of the class struggle, the properties taken from these classes, that is the lumpen proletariat or petit bourgeois, and they reduced to the proletariat. So ultimately only two classes remain, that is bourgeois and the proletariat. So what Marx said, we can understand the two classes on the basis of the relation to production. So what relation that the two classes have to the forces of production. So he said that it is the bourgeois who owns means of production. On the other hand, the proletariat, they own merely the labor power. So it is basically that distinction that is marked the difference between the bourgeois and the proletariat. And on the other hand, he also talked about how the class as a factor that determines the nature of power in the society. So how the class can be the determinant factor in determining the power of a particular group in the society. Another important classical theories who talk about the class was the understanding of Weber. But Weber's understanding is substantially different from the Marx understanding of class. While Weber do talk about how the economy can be an important determinant of the class, but by deviating from the Marx, he also said there can be some other component that basically determine the class position. So in that context, say for example, if we take the Weberian understanding of power, he was basically talking power in terms of three important indicators. That is how the class, status and the group power is the important factor for the power. So in that way, it is not only the economic power which is important, but there can be some other thing. So Weber understanding of power, or on the other hand, how the class as a determinant factor of power is different from that of the Marx. So it is the Marxian understanding of class as a determinant factor of power was basically negated by the Weber by substantially increasing the scope of the power that can be determined by the class, position, or that can be determined by the status position, or that can be determined by the political position. So in fact, the Weberian understanding of class is determined by the economic or market situation of the status of an individual. So the important understanding of Weber was how the market situation of an individual, or how the market situation of the status of an individual determined the class. So it was basically a critique to the Marxian understanding of class. On the basis of the work of Marx and Weber, some new concepts developed over the years, and these basically form the neo-Marxian and neo-Weberian understanding of class. Say for example, if we see the literature on the post-industrial society or the nature of class in the post-industrial society, we can talk about the understanding of class that is given by Wright, or we can also talk about the understanding of class that is given by Goldthorpe. Say for example, a Wright model on class is based on the four structural principles. They are the classes are relational, second is class relations are antagonistic, third is class antagonism are rooted in exploitation, and fourth is exploitation is based on the social relation of production. So these are the four structural properties of class which are given by Wright. On the other hand, for Goldthorpe, the class relations are based on the employment relation that in turn condition the class position in the modern society. Though both Marx and Weber largely influenced the work of Wright and the Goldthorpe, but it was seen that it was actually Marx which was influencing the work of Wright. On the other hand, the Goldthorpe was influenced by the work of Weber. So if we see the Marxian understanding or the Weberian understanding, we can see that the neo-Weberian understanding of class basically help us to go beyond the mere understanding of class, which basically try to see class only in the Marxian term. So it helps us to see the complexity of the class structure in our society. Then while talking about some of the contemporary theories on the class, we can talk about the Bourdieu understanding of class. So Bourdieu basically, his understanding of class is associated with the understanding of class in the contemporary society. Say for example, when he articulated the question of stratification, he draws heavily from the work of Max Weber to know the relation between the class and status. So in one of the important work, that is Distinction, which was published in 1984, Bourdieu tried to see the relation between the social class and the lifestyle. So in the Weberian sense, when he tries to see the relation between the social class and the lifestyle, he also was giving emphasis on his own concept of habitus. So how the habitus can play an important role in shaping the class position of an individual. So that we see how the class position of an individual is determined by the habitus in terms of the lifestyle. So that was a unique contribution of Bourdieu in the class analysis in his work Distinction. Another important thinker that is associated with the understanding of class in the contemporary time is Zizek. So Zizek, while articulating the understanding of class, he said that although he was influenced by the work of Marx, he largely deviated from the work of Marx. It is because he was heavily influenced by the work of Lacan. Zizek's important work, The Sublime Object of Ideology, provide a kind of fusion between the work of Lacan on the one hand and Hegel in order to understand the theory of ideology. For Zizek, there is no antagonism between two classes, and hence he argues that communist politics must be dissociated from the issue of antagonism between the classes and call upon for focusing actual antagonism. So he said that we need to focus on the actual antagonism rather than focusing on the issue of antagonism between the classes. So that was the Zizek understanding of class. While looking into the actual antagonism that are present in the contemporary society, he said that we should not reduce the antagonism only to the class antagonism. And he talked about 4 other kind of antagonism. They are, as Zizek argues, they are threat of ecological catastrophe. The second one is the inappropriateness of the notion of private property for intellectual property. The third one is socio-economic implications of new techno-scientific development. And the fourth one is new form of apartheid, new worlds, and the slum. So these are the 4 kind of antagonism that are seen by Zizek in the contemporary time. After discussing the idea of class, let us discuss the concept of culture. So culture, as you know, one of the important components for the study, especially in the contemporary society. There are various perspectives to study culture. Now, the culture is not seen as a kind of mere fossilized thing. Even there are some critical studies on the culture. So, we'll be discussing some of the important theories which are associated with the understanding of culture in sociology. We know that in context of class, it is structurally ingredient, or on the other hand, the interaction that take place among the class is also governed by the culture. So in that context, we can also talk about the Marxian understanding of culture. So who argue that, say for example, neo-Marxists argue that culture basically legitimizes the nature of oppression, or on the other hand, the neo-Marxists also argue that culture basically legitimizes the economic factor in our society. So this is another interesting understanding of culture that is seen in within the framework of neo-Marxists. So while the Marx talk about how the culture basically justify the inequality in the society, so that understanding of culture is also used by some neo-Marxists like Gramsci. So Gramsci, as you know, is an Italian neo-Marxist who basically provided the new understanding of culture within the Marxian framework. So he argued that culture helped in the creation of hegemony, whereby the dominant class used the culture in order to create hegemony over the subordinate class. So it is basically the hegemony of the dominant class is by means of culture. On the other hand, the Weberian understanding of status argued that it is basically the status which is differentiated on the basis of culture. So there is, although the Weber does not provide any objective understanding of culture, but because he said, because the knowledge about the culture reality is made from a particular viewpoint. So as a result, he said that there cannot be any objective understanding or analysis of the culture. But what he said, that status is basically governed by the culture, or it is a status which is differentiated on the basis of culture. Some other important work on the culture includes the Locke's understanding of the culture within the Marxian framework. And then we can also talk about the Frankfurt School or the critical theories understanding of culture. But the critical theories understanding of culture in fact is different from the Marxian understanding of culture, because in case of Frankfurt School we see how the culture is determined, the superstructure, or how the culture was used to control other aspect of the superstructure and the base. So it is in that way it is different from that of the Marxian analysis of economy, creating and determining the culture. So it is not the economy determining the culture, rather the culture is the guiding force for the superstructure. So that is how the Frankfurt School understanding of the culture is different from that of the Marxian understanding of culture. Then as I already mentioned, some contemporary theories also talk about, some of the other important theories also talk about the culture. So say for example, we can talk about the Bourdieu understanding of culture. So Bourdieu basically talk about, as you know, 4 kind of capital. So they are the economic capital, cultural capital, social capital and symbolic capital. And in the context of cultural capital, he used the idea of culture. Say for example, when he said that how the educational qualification or how the other associated form of culture is basically guiding the factor of cultural capital. So it is basically the educational qualification or some other thing are guiding the cultural capital. And this cultural capital also are internalized by the children and from the very early age, and as a result basically determine the behavior or the position of the individual or the children in the society. So it is by the means of cultural capital or how the culture shape the cultural capital that basically internalized by the children, and it is basically the habitats which play an important role in the context of culture as it was understood by Bourdieu. Apart from Bourdieu, we can also talk about the Zizek understanding of class culture. So Zizek, while understanding the global capitalist culture, he was influenced by Lacan. So as you know, the Zizek was one of the few prominent critics who attempted to bring the advocacy for socialism back into the mainstream discourse by analyzing the capitalist social relation of exploitation. Zizek looked at culture differently from that of the traditional Lacan. For instance, Lacan in general looked at the culture simply as a symbolic system. This symbolic system has a limited meaning linguistically. Zizek argues that at least humanities or even the hard sciences are being considered as a subsystem of cultural studies. Therefore, he basically questioned the obsession with the culture. So the Zizek understanding of culture is basically seen or can be seen as a kind of criticism to the so much obsession with the culture that is seen in the various studies. Zizek even criticized the Samuel Huntington work Clash of Civilization when he said that how the culture replaced or how the component of culture has come to replace the political or economic inequality. So in the other word, he also talked about the question of culture, how it is associated with the concept of capital, or on the other hand, how the dominant culture tend to justify the capitalist culture apart from legitimizing the West imperial power. So he said that it is basically the dominant culture which not only supported the capitalist culture, but it also legitimizes the Western imperialism. That is the problematic part of the culture. So we can say that the Zizek understanding of culture is basically how he sees culture as an arena of hegemony, where the one culture tries to dominate the other. So because of this, because of his understanding how he sees the culture in the context of hegemony, we can say that the Zizek basically contextualized the culture within the neo-Marxian framework. We already discussed the concept of class and culture. Now we are coming to the third important point, that is the power. So power, as you know, is one of the important concepts that is used in the sociology. So Max Weber basically have a greatest contribution to the understanding of power from the sociological point. So it basically talk about how power is an ability to control the resources, event, and making something happen in spite of obstacles and hurdles created by the others to prevent. So if we quote Weber, it is basically the ability of an individual or group to achieve their own goal or aim when others are trying to prevent them from realizing them. So it is basically the power is the ability of an individual to achieve their goal even the others opposite. So that is the Weberian sociological understanding of power. While talking about the power, Weber basically talk about the two types of power. One is authoritative and second one is coercive. So authority, while talking about authoritative power, he basically talk about that form of power which is legitimate, or on the other hand, that is subject to the consent of the people. On the other hand, coercive power is that is the power which is practiced without the legitimacy of the people, and thereby it is resisted by the people. So in contrast to the Karl Marx, who basically talk about the power in the context of relation of production, the Weberian understanding of power is different, and it basically associated how the individual can achieve or how individual can realize their goal even in the opposition of the other individual. Now discuss the Bourdieu understanding of power. So Bourdieu's understanding and analysis of power basically comes from his notion of habitus and the field. So Bourdieu asserts that power is combination of different capital that operate within the habitus and the field. So thus we can say that the Bourdieu's concept of power is sourced from his theory of society. On the other hand, for Bourdieu, power is culturally and symbolically created, and it is constantly re-legitimized through the interplay of agency and structure. Habitus is the main aspect of this power, where in it contain the socialized norms or tendencies that determine our behavior and thinking. So for Bourdieu, power also differ from one context to another context and changes over the period of time, like that of habitus. So he argues that like power differ from one context to another or the change over the time, it is similar to that of habitus. Another important contributor in the context of power is the understanding of Zizek. So Zizek, he argues that no class antagonism as a class itself has maybe very fluid, in the sense that everybody becomes a proletariat in the emancipatory struggle. So because of the fluid nature of the class, Zizek basically argues that there cannot be the true nature of class antagonism, because over the period of time, because of the emancipatory struggle, everybody can become proletariat. So what Zizek argues that power is immanent with resistance. In other words, power produces its own resistance as it is transgressive in nature. So Zizek claimed that state power itself is split within and it has a spectral underside. Like Bourdieu, for Zizek, too, culture is one of the major sources of power. The arena of culture creates hierarchy between the Western individual-centric culture and the other collective form. So further, culture is also used as a source of intervention in the other countries. So it is basically the culture which is used for the domination. Zizek says that the power that is used in the political field is symbolic in its nature. By symbolic, Zizek means that how the power is used in politically to mask or to mandate of the public authority under the scrutiny, rather than the issue like their relation with their spouse or the family. So modern regime exerts far more power than their previous regime, that is far less visible and has a greater reach. So he said that the nature of power that is exercised by the modern regime has a more influence, on the other hand, more influence, but they have the greater reach, although they are less visible. In conclusion, we can see that the Weberian as well as Marx understanding of class, culture and the power are relooked by the Bourdieu and the Zizek. On the other hand, after looking into the concept from the Marx understanding or Weberian understanding, how they are reinterpreted or how they are deviated from the understanding of Marx and Weber in the contemporary time, with special focus on the work of Bourdieu and Zizek, we also try to see how in fact the power is used for the continuation of the particular class. So on the other hand, power is also a kind of connecting component for the culture and power. So it is basically how the culture and the class are basically have the connection with that of power. So if we see the concept of hegemony, if we see how the legitimacy is gained by the particular class or how the power is played in the contemporary society, we need to keep in mind the concept of class as well as concept of culture. So this understanding or the basic understanding of this concept and how the relation that exists between this concept will help you to have a detailed study on the work of Bourdieu, the work of Zizek, or some of the other important neo-Marxists like Antonio Gramsci. Thank you.